Hello and welcome to this daily Habit Tracker Excel template tutorial. In this video, I've got two goals in mind and I'm excited to tackle them with you. First, we'll get to know this template, how it works, what it does, and the cool features it includes. Second, we'll build the entire template from scratch, step by step, so you can follow along and create it yourself. You'll find a free download link for the finished template in the description below. Feel free to pause, rewind, or replay this video as much as you need. My goal is to help you not just learn how to build this template, but also to pick up some handy Excel functions along the way. But before we dive in, let me give you a quick tour of what we're about to create. This template is a daily habit tracker designed with a 4-week calendar and space for up to 20 habits. On the left, you'll define your habits and goals, and you'll track them by marking each day you complete them. It also comes with a couple of handy summaries and dashboards. At the top, for each day of the calendar, you'll see how many habits or tasks you've completed. And on the right, for each habit, you'll see your average completion rate compared to your defined target. One more cool feature, you only need to set the start date at the top, and the calendar updates itself automatically. To make it more user-friendly, I've created two versions of this template. First one with drop-downs, and then the other one with checkboxes. Use whichever works best for you. Just a heads up, these type of checkboxes were introduced in Excel in June 2024, so double check that your version supports them. Now that we've covered the basics, let's dive straight into the good stuff. Let's go over how to use this template. Step 1, you will set the start date in your local language format. The field will highlight in yellow if it's empty, prompting you to enter a value. Once you have entered a date, the calendar and the end date will update automatically. Step 2, define your habits and goals. List your habits or tasks in column B, starting on row 15 and going all the way to row 34. There is room for up to 20 habits or tasks. And then specify your weekly goals here on column C, right next to your habits. That is the number of days you aim to complete each of those habits. Then step 3, track your daily progress. For the drop-down version, you will select a check mark from the menu that pops whenever you select the arrow. And for the checkbox version, simply click on the checkboxes directly in the matrix area. This will mark the habits as completed. Notice that the empty checkboxes or the dash values will be equal to not completed. Finally, step 4 is for you to review your progress. Analyze your dashboard summaries. At the top, here, just below your calendar, you will see your daily completion stats. And on the right, you'll find your habit completion average compared to your weekly goals. There's a bonus feature called Show Color Coding functionality here. You can enable the Show Color Coding feature to highlight habit completions in green on the tracker grid, activated by entering either true in cell C8 directly from the dropdown, or in the checkbox version by selecting the checkbox. And now for the main event, let's dive into the step-by-step guide to building this template from scratch. For this template, we'll break the creation process into 6 main sections. We'll first start with the calendar panel at the top, followed by the habits panel here on the left. Then we'll do the tracker section, that is the matrix. Then we'll do the dashboards here at the top and the right. And then we'll do the color coding functionality. And lastly, we'll convert this drop-down version into the checkbox version. In each section, we'll handle all the necessary values, formulas, and formatting step by step. To make things easier, I recommend using the exact same cells and formulas I do. This way you can compare your version with mine and quickly spot any differences if you run into any issue. And remember, feel free to pause, rewind, or replay this video as much as you need. Let's begin. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a blank sheet by clicking on the plus sign here. And I'm going to call this tutorial. Actually, for convenience, I'm going to leave it here right next to the habit tracker so that I can come back and compare against the original. Then next thing you need to do is so that this matches against mine, go to page layout and then select colors and then select this blue color that appears here. This way you will have the exact same color layout that I'm using. After completing this template, you can also change the scheme if you want a different tonality, or if you want, for example, these orange red, or you can also personalize your own. Let's start with the calendar as we mentioned. So for the calendar, I'm going to focus on this area at the top. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this panel. So for now, I'm going to copy these values and I'm going to put them on B6. So this is the same as I have typed start date and date show color coding. And these values you can see are the dates, but this is how dates actually appear in Excel. They're actually numbers. I'm going to delete these two. And for now, I'm going to leave these blank as well. So as you can see, you have start date and date show color coding. Now, this is the date. So I'm going to do today. And as you can see, as soon as I entered that formula, it now turned into a date format. And end date's going to be pending because it's going to depend on my actual calendar. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do widths. For that, I'm going to select here the column B, right click, column width. I'm going to specify 21. And by the way, these units might vary depending on your system. And here, I'm going to do 14. And finally here, 156. Oops. And remember, column widths are really arbitrary. I'm just going to copy this column width to columns D and E. Control-Alt-V triggers this paste special menu. And then if I hit W as the underscore W here, it selects column widths. And then I'm going to do OK. You can choose whatever column width you want. I'm just matching this against the exact same thing back here. And just for these to match as well, I'm going to copy these values. This is just going to specify the selecting or setting your start date here on C6 for the panel to actually be updated and for this template to work. Now, next thing, the background color, then the font color, and then the border. I'm going to go with a white and then see that it's okay. It was not. So I'm going to use this thinner one and then select all borders and then center alignment and probably bold. Let's see. Yes, I also have to bold this. Now that I have this one matching the one in the example, I can copy the format to the end date. This is done in two ways. One, you can click Format Painter and then just select your destination. You can also do Control Copy and then either paste special here in the format or go to Control Alt V and then select the formats and then click OK. And just so you know, I have a quick access tool. Whenever I hit Alt 1, I trigger the format painting. So whenever you see that I do this, it's because I have just added the shortcut. But it's going to be the same as going here, clicking Format Painter, and then clicking on the destination. Now this one is in italics. I hit Control I, or you can just hit this one as well. And then it seems to be this blue. And then it's bolded. Control B, bolded, or you can also select this. And then for the border, I just need to change the color. And then all borders. And then the same border applies here. And then I'm going to center these values as well. And then as you can see, this is going to be a formula. So this has to be shaded in gray, just so that we know that we don't change that value. And it's actually a lighter gray. I think it's this one. We can actually check that. Oh, it's the second one. Okay. There you go. Now let's do the panel on the right. So for the panel, you can see that we have three things. We have the weeks, we have the day, and then in terms of two things, right? We have days in the names and then days in the numbers. So this is going to be pretty simple to do. What we need to do first is the first day is going to match my start date. But this doesn't have the format I want. I only want the name of the day here and then the number of the day here. How do I change that? I go to home here, and then in this formatting piece, I'm going to click on the arrow and then more number formats. What you can also do is click on this arrow here at the bottom. It's going to open the same menu. And then I'm going to go to custom, and then in custom, you can see that I can type whatever I want here, and then it's going to show me how that is showed here in the actual template. So if I hit nothing, you can see the number appears, which is the actual value in the cell that Excel is using, which is just an offset from 0 or the initial date. And then if I hit D, it starts at 27. Double D is two numbers, so leading zeros for numbers that are single digit. For example, 1, 2, 9. You'll see 0, 1, 0, 2, and so on and so forth. But then 3Ds, I have Wednesday, the abbreviation, and then 4Ds, I have the full name. So I'll go with 3Ds here. And then for this one, I'll do the same thing, but only 1D. And then I'll add the week one. And we already have week 1, Wednesday, 27. Now, how do I do the rest of the calendar panel? This is actually pretty fun, because the only thing I need to do is, since this is consecutive, I just need to add 1, and now it's a Thursday. Same thing here. I add 1, and it's now the 28th. Now, the only thing I need to do is to change the width, which is going to be 5.33. Again, arbitrary. And then I can copy that value here. Ctrl-Alt-V, and then column widths, hit enter. Enter or clicking OK is the same thing. And now the only thing missing is I need to format these two. As you can see, they are alternating formats. So I'm going to first select the Wednesday. Seems like it's this darker shade of green with white actually font. And then this one, it's probably this one, and then white. There you go. And then for the grays here below, it's the middle gray. So I hit the middle gray. And then this one's lighter. It's the second one. And then I need to center these two. And then I need to add a border, which is going to be a light border. Let's pick white. And then all borders. And now the only thing I need to do is to copy these two all the way till the end of the panel. So in this case, it's column AG. So I'm going to copy these two. And then I'm going to go to AG. And I'm going to do two things first. I'm going to do Ctrl-Alt-V first widths. And then I'm just going to hit Ctrl-V. Now, something did not work. And why is that? Because this formula was copied successfully, right? This is plus the next one. This is plus the next one. But what happens here is that this was fixed to E6. So it's now moving, right? And it's not really the reference that I need. So I just need to copy this formula and then paste only the formula here. And now I have my panel updating. But I also need to do the same for the names. Only formulas. And there you go. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday, and then it repeats. So now, because it repeats, I can put here week 2, go to the next Wednesday, sorry. Same thing, and then last one. And then if I look at the example, this is actually a merge cell. So if you click here, you're selecting the entire thing. How do I do that? I just select the entire range, and then I hit here, merge and center. Then I just change the background color, as well as the font. And then I think it's bolded. And I can copy these, again, Alt-1 for me, or Format Painter, into week 3. This is also carrying over the merge effect. And then I can do the same here, and I just need to change to a lighter background. And then finally, copy the format into week 4. Then the only thing that's missing is a border, which you can see that it's slightly thicker by the end of each of the weeks. How do I change that? I select this entire region. Then I'm going to go to the border section. I'm going to do the line style thick, so the last one. And I'm actually just going to click on the right border. There you go. I'm going to do the same here. Right border. By the way, whatever values you have already specified in format remain. So this is already predefined as right border, white, thick. You can see that the blue remains here, the white remains here, and so on. And there you go. One last thing. End date. I'm going to set it to the last date. And then I need to change the format here. So you can just drop here, short date, and there you go. Let's now move on to the habits section. So for habits, again, I'm going to copy these entire values, which is the same as having entered them manually. And it's going to be cell B14. So if you're doing this, you can just enter habits, and then in parentheses, number of days per week, and then some examples. Or you can leave it blank as well. And then I'm going to edit the header value, the format of the header. Alt-1, my shortcut for Format Painter. And then I'm going to do the same here. Then I'm going to merge them. That way the entire thing will have the same format, but it's now merged. And then I'm going to actually do something a bit lazy for these habits. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select these. I'm going to paint the format. Copy the format with Format Painter. But then here I'm just going to go back to general instead of date. And then with that, I can just copy this into the entire selection. So all the way to row 34, including column C. I select the entire thing with Shift so that my selection keeps expanding. And then once I have expanded it all the way to C34, I can hit Ctrl-Alt-V, then select the formats here, and then OK. And there we go. And now let's move on to the tracker section in the middle. So for this tracker section, you see that I have two things. I have just this header, which is completely empty, which acts as a separator. And then I have the actual cells here. So for the separator, again, something lazy. We always reuse what we have. I copy these, Format Painter, and then I just need to change the background. And then for the cells, I can do copy these, and then select till the end. And then with Shift and my arrow key, I just go all the way down to the selection until AG34, Ctrl-Alt-V, then hit on Formats again, only Formats, and then OK. And then the last thing I need is for these borders to be a bit thicker. So I'll come back here, change the color to gray, and then a bit annoying because you have to go back, line style, and then, oh, it was already thick, okay. And then hit only the right border, And then we can do two things. We can select this entire thing and then click here, or we can just use the format painter. And since I have already selected the entire range of rows, I just need to select the entire thing, format painter, and then click on the first row of my selection, and then it will drag the entire thing. And then one last thing we need to do the drop downs. We need to have a check mark, and then we need to have these dash. Now, check marks are actually some text that you can put in Excel. So the best way for you to have these at hand is for you to use this formula, the unichar 10,003, which is the one I always use. If I do that on cell AI7, and then I can do two things. I can do the entire formula, right? Which is probably what you will do because you don't have it. You'll type unichar and then in parentheses 10,003. Once you have that, you can just copy and paste as value. And then if I double click again in the cell, I now have the actual check mark there and not the formula. And then for the dash, I can put a minus sign, but if this is not allowed in your version because it thinks that you're putting a formula and it will throw an error, you can also do the simple quote and then dash, and that way you can just put the dash and the simple quote won't show. But that way Excel will know that you're not trying to put a formula, you just want the dash to be there. And then we'll mark this as the completion, right? This means completed, and this means not completed. And that's just the legend for you to know what you're putting. And now you can see that these have the same width as my panel. So I'll just copy that. And then this has a different width. We can check which one I used. Again, arbitrary, it's 12. So we'll do column, we'll select, right click, column width, and then 12. And there you go. Once I have that, what I can do, oh, these are actually centered, center align. Once I have that, then the dropdown is very easy. I just select the entire range, go to data, go to data validation, then click on list, and then on source, I'm gonna do equals, and then I'm gonna select these two values, then hit OK. And as you can see, it now, this arrow appeared, which is the same arrow that appears in every single cell of the region. But when I click on the arrow, I now have the check mark I specified and the dash. So now we have completed the tracker section. Now let's do the dashboards. Let's start first with the dashboard on the top. And for that, first let's do these little labels on the left. So as you can see, we have absolute, percentage, and then a graph. I'm just gonna copy them, but you can type them. As you can see, I didn't copy any format. It's just the values, as if I had typed them. And then on the left, you have tasks completed. Completed. And then on the right, you have first, as you can see, the absolute number of tasks completed. For this, you'll need a formula. So in this case, the formula needs to be equals countifs. My criteria range is the entire day. And then my criteria is a check mark. And then I'm going to freeze this with F4. And then I close the formula. Now what is this formula doing? This formula is saying I'm going to count every single cell in this range, F15 to F34, so in blue, that matches a given criteria. In this case, the content of every cell is going to be compared against the content of cell AI7, which is the check mark. If they match, then I'm going to add one, and then I'm going to go to the next one, and so on and so forth. And the number that appears at the top is going to be equal to the number of cells whose content match a checkmark. So if I just start adding checkmarks, you can see that the number is going to be updated. And then if I add a dash, if it's on a blank cell, nothing's going to change. But if it's on a cell that has the checkbox, the checkmark, then it's going to be counted. It's not going to be counted in the total. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I have a total of 4 here. That way we know it's working. And then very important, these dollar signs that I skipped specify that this is a fixed reference. So fixed references in Excel mean that whenever I drag a formula, the reference will be kept. And you can specify columns or even rows as fixed. In this case, it doesn't matter if I drag the formula to the right, the column will always be AI, and it doesn't matter if the formula is dragged downwards, the row will always be 7 in this case. For F15 and F34, since I have not specified any dollar signs, when I start dragging the formula to the right, let's see what happens. Dragging and copying is the same, by the way. I can do this, or I can just drag, and it did the same thing. If I enter this, you can see that now the columns are H, which is the actual column I'm in, and in this case, the column is G, which is the column I'm in. So when I started dragging the formula, Excel automatically updated the columns. I'm just going to copy it all the way to the right. What I did right now is I clicked on Shift, and then I moved with the arrow key to the right. And then once I've done that, I can just simply use the keyboard's Control R, which is Control Right. And that way the entire formula was copied. Now, next thing is the percentage. For the percentage, I need to know how many habits I have defined, and out of those, how many I have completed. So for that, what I can do is I can do a count ifs, first to know how many I have defined. So this is going to be selecting the entire range. I'm going to freeze it. And I clicked on F4, by the way, as a shortcut to freeze the entire selection that I just inputted. And I want to freeze it because when I start taking the formula to the right, I don't want these references to change. And then the next thing is the criteria, which is just going to be not blank, essentially. So whenever I have specified something, I want you to tell me that I have defined that habit. In this case, it returns 10. So these are 10 habits that I have defined from 15 to 24. And so I have 10. But now this is a percentage. So I need to add that this needs to be divided by the total. And there you go. But one more thing I need to do. What happens if this is empty? There's going to be an error here because it's dividing by 0. So the way you avoid that is you just add an if error, my favorite formula. And if error, blanks, essentially. Double quote is essentially no value. So it's completely blank. And then if I delete this, now it's empty. Now there's something there, right? There's a formula, but the value displayed is a blanks because there's an error. So if I come back here and then I delete everything, there's nothing going to be here because there's an if error formula. Now that we have defined the formula, I can again drag it with Ctrl R or copy and paste. And then I need to actually do this as a percentage. And then I need to center align these two. And then I also want to add borders, same color, but not the thick one. We can specify all borders. There you go. And now we need to add this graph. Now this graph is a cool thing in Excel called Sparkline, which also exists, by the way, in Google Sheets. And the way you do this is you go to your entire range where you want your Sparkline. Then you go to insert, and then here you have spark lines. You have lines and columns. In this case, I want a column. And then the location range, since I already selected the entire thing, it's going to know where that is. But now the data range, I want the absolute. So I input the range, and then I hit OK. And then obviously nothing's shown because everything's 0. But then I want this to be a bit thicker, the row, so that I actually can see some variations. And as you can see, I can also right-click, row height, and I put on 28.8. Again, that's just arbitrary. You can do it thicker if you want. And now to test this, let's just put a check mark. And as you can see, it's updating, but the height of the spark line is not changing at all. So how do you do that? You go to spark line. So see that these new option appeared. It's not here, but when I click on the spark line, doesn't matter in which one of the cells of the range, it appears. And then you go to axis, and then you're going to click on same for all spark lines. And you're also going to do the same for the vertical axis. And now as you can see that since the axis is the same for every single one, now this is triple the height of this one. What happens if I now put, for example, double here? They both shrunk. And you can keep on doing the same thing, and you'll see that it works. Now, obviously, there's an error here, like logically, because these are not defined, but I completed them, so it's now showing more than I have available. Obviously, you don't have to validate against that logic, because you'll notice directly in your tracker. And then another thing I forgot to do is to change the color of the spark line. So that way, whenever you change the entire layout, it will also update. And then I need to add a few things here for formatting. I think they're centered. And not only centered, but this one is also at the middle align. And then this task completed is actually merged, I guess. It is. And it's bolded. And it's using these blue. And it's on font 14. So here we go. We have font size 14. We have the blue. We have bold. Then we have middle align. Then we have the merge and center. And then we specify all borders. And I think the rows are a bit different as well here. So let me see. I'm just doing this so that everything is entirely the same. Whoops. Right click, row height, 14.4. There you go. And I actually didn't use capital C. I mean, the same thing. Okay. And now I also used a border for the spark lines. So what happens if I click on all borders? You can see that there's going to be this line between each of them. That's not what I want. I just want the outside borders. There you go. Now I think it's looking the same. Okay. Now let's do the summaries on the right. I'm just going to do the lazy thing. Borrow this. And then do Ctrl-Alt-V formats. And then as you can see, I have number percentage graph. So £, percentage, and then graph. And then I have formulas here. That's why I also have them in a different gray. Now what this is doing is just counting the entire range to see how many I have completed. So again, it's going to be the same count ifs that I have, but it's now going to count across the row, not across the column. This range, I don't want this to be kept frozen because I want to drag it down. So I'm going to leave it like that. And I'm going to add this one. Now it's showing 0, but let's just fill it out with this example so that we can see that all things are the same. I just copy the entire thing and then pasting as value. Now, if you want this to match exactly, you would have to go and select these check marks on every single row, but you can trust me and then just use the formulas that I used, and then we'll see together right now if it matches or if it doesn't match. Now I want this to be in a percentage format. So I'm going to do a count A, just to count how many non-blanks I have here. Then I'm going to freeze it, because I'm going to drag it down. And then I'm going to divide that by 7, assuming every single week has 7 days. And then I'm going to multiply that by 5, which is my weekly target. For now, I'm going to leave it as general. And you can see 20. 20 is my total completion target for the 4 weeks, 4 by 5, right? Same goes for 7, that's 28. And so now I need to divide 8 by my total and shift to percentage. And there you go. Now what I can do is I drag the formula, copy, select the range, paste its formulas, and then do the same for the formats. But now something happened. There's an error here. And by the way, these two match. But now there's an error here. And the error happens because I'm counting something. See, I'm counting the days, but then I'm multiplying by something that doesn't exist. And then I'm dividing that by something that doesn't exist. So it's essentially dividing by 0. So the way I do that is I can do two things. One is adding an if error. The other one, just to show a variation, is to say, only do this if I have defined something here. If this is different than blank, then do this entire thing. And if it's not, then show nothing. I copy the entire thing. And there you go, it's now empty. But now that doesn't really solve these zeros, because I'm only validating this one. But you can see that I don't have any zeros here. So I also need to change the formula under the pound column. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something similar. If this is different than blank, then count. And then if not, blank. And then actually, this one, I can also change. Instead of C, I can also do AH, for example. And then I copy the formulas. And there you go. Now I have the exact same thing. Now let's add some formatting. So these two will do gray. And then we'll align to the center. And then we'll add borders. It was too dark. Let's use a lighter one. Now we're just missing the graph, which I'm going to implement with conditional formatting. So for me to do the conditional formatting, I select the range, go to new rule, select the first option, and then here I'm going to click data bar. I'm going to click on show bar only. The minimum is going to be 0. And then you have two options. You can leave the maximum automatic, and that way it will change how your graphs appear. So it will be relative instead of like an absolute. Or you can also do number, for example, then specify 1. So this goes from 0% to 1%. Sorry, from 0% to 100%. And that way your graph will always be shown in an absolute axis. But also, if you click on just automatic, your graphs will be showing relative to each other. So it's just a matter of preference. In this case, to match the example, I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to click the darker shade of blue, no border, and then nothing happened. Why is that? Because the value that is being used for the graph needs to be specified in these cells as well. So the only thing I need to do is to do equals the percentage, and then copy these as formulas. And look, because I didn't specify a maximum, right now 40% is the maximum. But as soon as I hit enter, now everything is relative in size. If I had done maximum 1, for example, let's see what happens. I'm gonna go to manage rules, click on this, edit, and then number 1 or 100%. Then see what happens with the scale as soon as I hit OK. Apply. You saw? Everything got reduced because this 90% was being considered as 100 as the maximum because it was set as automatic. Now it knows the maximum is 100. So this tiny space left is now the 10%, and everything now is aligned to that horizontal axis value. It's just a matter of preference. In this case, I'm going to just revert it back to what we had just to match the example. And I also need to add a border as well as the light gray outside borders, remember? Because I want this to appear as a graph like the spark line. You could also add every single border if you wanted. And I'm actually missing this just to be super clear on how to make it. Line color is already set, but now it needs to be the thick one. And right border. There you go. So that's it for the dashboards. Now let's do the color coding functionality. Here, the first thing you'll do is to click on cell C8, then go to data, data validation, and then here you'll put list, and then on source, you'll list true, comma, and then false. Hit OK. And now if I select true here, nothing happens yet, because the second thing we need to do is we need to do a conditional formatting. Now what I'll do is I'll select my entire range, conditional formatting, and then the lazy way here is to just say greater than. Doesn't really matter. What I want is this green fill, because that way it will already be green and I can just change the formula and use the format. Hit OK. Then I go to manage rules, and then I edit the one I just added. Then I'm going to use a formula. And the formula I'm going to use is going to be 2 conditions. So I'm going to do an nth and then 2 conditions. The first condition is that my cell, so remember, conditional formatting also drags formulas to the right and down. So F15 will be translated to every single cell once it's updated. This cell needs to be equal to the check mark. So you can do equals the check mark or actually equals AI. That's the same. And then remember, since this is a text, I need to add the double quotations. Second condition is going to be my cell C8 equals to true. And then once I have that, I click OK. And remember, C8 needs to be also frozen, because as soon as I drag the formula to the right and down, the reference always needs to be C8. I'm going to click OK and then apply. OK. And then see, if I just put a dash here, it's not highlighted. In the other way, with a greater than, it will probably be highlighted because it's detecting there's something there. And the other condition also is for these true. because as you can see, when I click on true here, it gets highlighted in green. So I go to highlight, then equal to true, and then the green. And if I don't have to edit it, it's just for you to see. Here it says cell value equals true, which is what we want. So, okay. And that's how the conditional formatting is implemented. Now, before moving to the checkboxes version, the last thing I'm gonna do, because I like it, is to use this light gray shading for all the background colors of the cells. So I'm gonna do it right now, and I'm gonna speed it up just for you to know. And I'm gonna also copy these with. There you go. Now I'm gonna do the background. You select the entire range, you click here, and then you click on the color you want. And then once I have that, what I like doing as well is going to view and then disabling grid lines. That way your template looks much cleaner. And now I actually had a border on the conditional formatting of the data bar, because when I'm toggling between the two, you can see that there's some slight variation. So the way to fix that is to just click on this. I mean, it's completely optional. You go to edit, here, solid, and then click on gray. Okay. Apply. And there you go. Now the last part, as I mentioned, is let's change this into the checkbox version, which is going to be super quick now that we have done all this great, amazing work. So how do you do that? You duplicate this tab, which you can do by right click, then select on move or copy, and then hit on this create a copy and then move to the end. Or you can also do just go over here, hit on control, and then with your mouse you can move, and then you now rename it. You can either double click or then right click and then rename. And I'm just going to add at the end the checkbox ending. And then once I have this, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to change these tracker cells, and I'm going to change these true one. So first, these tracker cells, I first need to delete the values, and then I go to data and delete the validation with clear all. And I'm going to do the same for this. And the next thing, I'm going to select my range, go to insert, and then hit checkbox. Remember, these checkbox will only appear if your version is compatible with them, which is starting June 2024. Checkbox. And then I'm going to change the font and do the same here. Insert, checkbox, and then the font. And now there's only one thing remaining, which you can see all my formulas are not working properly. And then probably also if I do this, the functionality of the color coding is also broken. Now I just need to change the formulas. So first, let's do the conditional formatting. I don't really need to select my entire range. I can just click on whichever one and then go to manage rules. Then I'm going to go to edit. And then obviously the problem is that it's not equal to a check mark anymore. It's true. Both are equals true conditions. And then I click on OK and apply, and then OK again. And there you go. Now it's working. Now this one worked because it was already equals true, if you remember. Cell value equal to true. And that's because checkboxes in Excel, whenever you have a checkbox checked, the value of the cell that the checkbox is within is going to be set to true. And if I uncheck it, it's now false. So that's why this one worked already. And then you no longer need these two here, by the way. And then the other thing we need to now adjust is the graphs here. Sorry, the formulas here. So now this formula was saying the same thing, needs to be equal to this check mark. So I'm going to change that, set it to true. And then here, nothing is needed. And then the other thing that I need to change, if I don't want this line to appear, it's a weird thing that Excel does because everything's 0. So I just can do, if this is 0, then just do nothing essentially. So I can do the same thing for this one actually. If I delete the entire thing, you can see that the graph is also showing weird. So I can do just something like, instead of just equals this, I can do if this is 0, then just show nothing, else show AI 15, and then just copy the formula. And then since I have modified the formula here, I can just copy it here as well. And that way nothing will show if this is 0. And just to showcase that this is the same equivalent, what we'll do is we'll just copy these. And then I'll just click on Control V. And let's compare. Okay, oh, I forgot. We also need to change these formulas, of course. So what do we do here? Again, this one needs to be true. There you go. And then I copy only the formula. And let's see. Now we have it. You can see we have 2 equal checkboxes and then 2 equal dropdowns. What you can also do is once you have your dropdowns like this, you can do something like if this equals my check mark, and then you freeze it, then true, else false. And then you select the entire thing here, formulas, and then you need to drag it down all the way to row 56. And then once you have this matrix, you can copy and paste it here directly. And that way your values will match so that you don't have to manually go and check each one of them. Always think about the lazy, easy way to do things, like copy things that you already have, etc. Okay. Now, before we say our goodbyes, I want to talk about 2 extra topics for this template. First is how to add more habits or rows, and then the second one is how to add more days or columns in your template. First, how to add additional rows. What you're going to do is you're going to simply insert rows before the last row, so before 34. So 33 is good to go. And also make sure that you add it after the first one. So between 16 and 33, that's good to go. And to add, you can just select the entire thing, right click, and then insert. And as you see, this was just inserted. And then as you can see, because I inserted it between 15 and 35, format was kept intact. In case of my dropdowns, they are also intact. In case of my formulas, they're also intact because the rows specified already were below and above that one that I inserted. So that's already, you know, something that's done automatically for you. That's why it's important to make it after the first one and before the last one. And the only thing that was not updated correctly is this formula, the one that I inserted. How can I tell? I can go to formulas and then show formulas. And then you can see that this is empty. So the only thing that you need to do is you just need to select all of these formulas. So the 3 columns. Let's hide these for now. And then actually, if you're not sure which one you inserted, you can always go to the top, select Control Copy, and then the entire selection. And then hit Control Alt V and then formulas. And that will do it. The same thing goes for the checkbox version. You just need to go to your checkbox version and then insert again. Right click, selecting the row, insert, and then copy your formulas as well. Now I'm gonna undo that so that I can keep the same number of rows across all. There you go. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is now columns, or weeks in this case. So for weeks, and actually so that I don't have to delete, I'm just gonna create a copy of these and a copy of these. And here, what I recommend is for you to copy the entire block of couple of weeks. That way, I can copy these and then right click, then insert copied cells. And that way the alternating colors work. You just have to rewrite here 4, then 5, and then 6. Then I need to update the formulas just for the week 6. So this day, as you can see, doesn't match because it goes all the way from the 27 to the 24 that we already had. But this one, if I double click, is referencing the wrong cell. And after I do that, it's now updated. And then another thing that I need to do is to update the spark lines. By the way, notice that my last day is still updated here because the reference was not lost. And notice that because I just copied the entire thing and inserted between the last and the first one, these formulas are also kept. All my conditional formatting is also kept. And everything works except the spark lines here. You can see that Excel created 2 ranges. And that's not what I want, because now this middle range is not connected to the first and the last one. So what I do is I just delete the entire thing, and then I just reinsert it again. So sparkline, clear, and then now that there's nothing here, I can go again to insert the column, and then my range is going to be the entire thing, which matches the same columns as in my location. And then remember, I changed the color, and I changed especially the vertical axis. The other one doesn't really matter, but I'm going to do it anyways. And that's it. And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up or drop a comment below to let me know what you think. If you're into Excel and want to learn more, consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be posting more tutorials and courses to help you level up your spreadsheet skills and create awesome templates and tools. And hey, if you're in the hunt for more productivity and planning tools, check out my store. The link's in the description. Until next time, stay productive, stay awesome.